So proceeding with our journey to explore Blender, I thought playing around in the basic section of effects first would be better before actually going animating 3D things. So I have been using this channel as my point of learning. Today we'll actually be creating this cool looking metallic mirror neonic kind vibrating floor animation. So let's get into it, shall we? This is the default view which you get when you fire up Blender for the first time. And let's actually go ahead and delete the cube. Let's add a plane. Here's the plane. Let's scale it to 8. Okay, now we have our plane. Let's go ahead and enable the wireframe mode so that we see the changes happening on the plane level. So let's go to the edit mode and let's subdivide this. So subdivide is basically breaking down the plane into multiple pieces. So we'll be having 100 cuts here. So now let's go back to the object mode, and now you can see you have 100 cuts made on the plane, both vertically and horizontally. So now we can add a modifier. So modifiers are basically used to change the geometry of object. So let's add a modifier. Here is decimate modifier, and let's bring down the ratio here. Now you can see a beautiful pattern forming on the plane. I think this should be okay, and let's click apply. And we are done for the pattern here. So now let's go to the edit mode and just a second, let me enable all of these selections. So here it is, the object is selected, and let me bring out the operator search and here we'll search for split. So we have two splits of faces by edges, faces and edges by vertices. So we'll go with the faces and edges by vertices, and that's done. So let's try scaling these objects. It won't scale because it is actually being scaled to the central origin point. So let's change that to individual origin points of each shards there. So here it is. So let's select the individual origin, and now if I try to scale, you're able to see these fragments forming. So I think this should be okay. So we have a plane. So let's add something to it. So let's add a modifier named solidify. It must be somewhere here. Okay, solidify. So it basically solidifies the fragment here. If you're able to see, it's much more like a 3D structure now, each fragment. So now if you play around with the thickness, you will be able to increase or decrease the the shard size here. There. So let's go ahead with 0.04. Okay, I think that is okay for now. If at all we feel the need, we'll make changes later. So now let's add another modifier here. If you're able to, I'll just zoom in to see what's happening here. Let's add one more modifier. That would be a bevel. Bevel is somewhere here. Okay, and let's make sure that the segment is 1. The amount you can tweak with. So bevel actually helps throwing off the light, the edge of this entire pieces. That's bevel. So it will help us reflect the light in some way. We'll be able to see that effect later on. So bear with me for now. So here's the overall scene. Let's add one more modifier called displace. Let's add it here, and as you're able to see, it totally ruined our overall plane. So that is because it is being applied on the overall layer. Let's actually move it to the topmost layer so that it is applied over these effects. Let's add a new property, and here let's add clouds, and let's actually bring down the strength. This is actually modifying the entire object in a way, and let's play around with the settings a little more. The size here, the size is being manipulated, if you are able to see. Let's keep it for now. Let's keep it a little more less. Okay, I think this should be okay. So now let's add a camera. Now this is my most favorite part. You get to see what's happening, and you can add a camera view. Now if you actually go to the render view, so this is the render view. So here's the camera. Let's go to the camera view. This is the camera view. Let's actually lower it down a little bit, and let's find some angle here. Yeah, I think this should be okay. Let's go into the render engine settings here. Okay, so here's the render engine settings. So we basically have two types of render engines. One is Eevee, one is Cycles. Now Eevee is a real-time rendering engine, and it's pretty quick and instant, and this is, I think, good enough for most of the amateur learners like you and me. Whereas Cycles is a physics-based rendering engine. It tries to match real-world physics when it comes to lighting, the reflections and all, but it does take quite some time to render. So here's the example for that. Let's make sure that ambient occlusion, the bloom, the screen space reflections, they're all enabled. And let's actually change the world background to black. Okay, and here's our basic light. If there's one default light which is added when you open a project. So if I turn it off and on, here's the default light. So now let's actually do one thing. Let's delete this light and let's add our own light. Shift A, and here it is, light, point light. And let's actually go to the X view and let's go back to this. You're able to see this. Here's the x-axis view, here's the y-axis view, and here's the z-axis view. So let's go to x-axis view and let's bring it up. Here's our light. Actually, this is actually our light. So okay, I think it should be okay when it comes to our camera angle. Let's go here and let's go to our camera view. It's not sufficient, and so let's select our light. Let's go to the light settings and let's actually change the color. I'm going with the neonic blue, and let's actually increase its watt. Now you're able to see something come up. So let's actually increase it a little more. Here's 200 watt light bulb we have. So let's bring it down and let's bring it to the y-axis here. Okay, for now let's leave it like this. Let's add one more light here, and light and point light. Here's another light we have. Let's change the color to the bluish shade. Let's bring it to 2000, and here it is. So we have a basic light setup, we have a basic fragments also, we have a camera. So now let's move ahead with the texture part. This is one of the most interesting part, and this is something which I'm still learning. So let's go ahead and add one default texture to it. Let's select the plane. Let's go to the material and add a new material, and let's select the metallic and make it more metallic. And now let's go ahead to the shading preset. We have a default node created by that default material which was assigned to this plane. Now let's go ahead and start adding individual nodes. Okay, so let's add a color ramp. Here it is, and color. Let's add its color to the base color. Now let's add Voronoi. Here it is. Let me search Voronoi texture. Let's add its color to the FAC of color ramp. You do make sure that you're observing the changes happening in the texture. And here's the Voronoi texture for that. And let's bring down the randomness a little bit. Now let's add another node that would be mapping. Here's the mapping. And let's add one more node that would be texture coordinate. Here it is. So let's plug the object into vector and this vector into this vector. Okay. Now let's add a little more detail to this texture. Let's add bump node. Here it is. Let's add its normal to the normal of our primary BSDF. And let's go ahead and add another bump node. And let's add its normal to the height. Okay. And let's go ahead and add a checker texture. And let's bring its color to this height. Okay. Now let's start. Let's add one more node here. That would be color ramp. Let me add it here. Let's actually plug this color to this FAC and this color to its roughness. Basically, let's go to roughness. Let's try to tweak certain values now. So let's bring down the strength of this. Okay, and let's actually bring up the strength of this checker texture. And now let's bring down the randomness. Let's bring it a little higher. The scale would be here. Let's go ahead and actually change this to Minkowski, the exponent. Okay, so we're able to see some patterns forming here. Let's scale them. Okay, and let's play with the randomness. Let's see what we can come up with. Okay, now let's go ahead and increase the strength. That is the checkered texture for here. Let's play around with the scale here. I think this should be okay for now. Let's go to the render view. Let's go and check what we are coming up with. Okay, I think not bad. Let's go back to the shading preset and let me try something else as well. The scale, let's bring up the scale. Okay, let me bring down this. Okay, the layout model. Let's try rendering this. Let's see how the image comes up. So this is what we are coming up with. I think it's okay. I think it looks pretty good. Let's go back to the shading view and let's play around a little more. This mapping, where it is. Okay, here it is. Let's add the mapping vector to checkered texture vector as well. Let's see what it does. Okay, let's render the image. Let's see what we come up with. Okay, not bad. So now let's actually animate this overall plane. Let's go to the layout and let's go switch back to our default view. And for that, let's go to the top view. Here it is. We're going to add a circular path here. Let's add a curve and circle. Here it is. Let's move it here. I think this should be okay. This should be okay. Let's bring in the point here. Where is that? Okay, here's the point. Let's scale it. Okay, now let's add another object here. That would be our empty object and just a plain access object. Here it is. And now let's go to the empty objects object constant, and let's add a constant to follow path. Okay, so now the target would be our the circular path which we created earlier. That would be our target. Let's go to the preferences. Here is the preferences section, and in the animation make sure that you have your default interpolation as linear. So we already have that. And now let's actually change the frames from 250 to 120. Let's bring out our playback area here. So on the first frame it should be 0, so that is okay. Let's add a keyframe here. So we've added a keyframe, and when it comes to 120th or maybe 120th frame, let's add the offset 200, and let's add a keyframe. Now you're able to see the circle being rotated, right? You're able to see the circle is moving in a circular direction. Now let's actually go ahead and animate the plane to move along with this circular path, to react to this circular path basically. So in the plane, let's actually go to the displace modifier under, so we have this texture coordinate. So change the coordinate from local to object, and this is where we'll select the object, the empty object, because that is being animated there, right? This should ideally animate the entire plane. Let's go back to our camera view and let's bring out the animation thing here. Now you're able to see it's being animated, and let's disable the grid. Let's enable a render view. Let's move the camera a little bit. So it's pretty amazing the way you can move the camera, right? Let's select our camera. Let's actually add the depth of field. So here's the depth of field, and now let's actually decrease the focal distance all the way and the f-stops as well. Now let's actually start working on the focal distance to bring out the point of focus which we require. Actually moving it one slower. So okay, I think this should be okay. And let me now add the f-stop here. So yeah, I think this looks cool for now. So we can of course play around with the multiple variations. You can, okay, so let's play around with the focus. Okay, I think the focus should be somewhere here. We have that. Let's play around with the f-stops. Let's bring it all the way down first, and let's slowly increase. Let's actually go ahead and render the image and see what's coming up. Okay, I think looks good for now. Let's do one thing. Let's add one more light that would be highlight the starting this area. That would highlight this area. So let's add one more light here. Okay, here it is, and let's actually go ahead and render the animation.
So I really did try my best to keep the video as short as I could. While I'm exploring Blender a little more, I thought maybe I could share the learning experience with you guys, probably hoping to bring out some creative side of yours maybe. And so do give Blender a try, do let me know how it works out for you. Any suggestions, any comments for the video format, the length, they are all welcome, they help a lot. So till we meet again in the next one, bye.